The Soviet military was once a formidable force that intimidated other countries, especially Western European nations, for a long time. However, this military also had some flaws in its construction. It was prepared for a large-scale global war, and it appeared somewhat clumsy in dealing with smaller-scale conflicts. The Soviet army suffered significant losses during the Afghanistan War, particularly in anti-landmine warfare. Today, we will briefly introduce some of the Soviet Army's history in anti-landmine warfare during this conflict. At the beginning of the conflict, neither side paid much attention to landmines because the Soviet mechanized forces advanced quickly, and many battles were completed in a short period of time. The real entanglement in landmine warfare occurred shortly after the insurgents began guerrilla warfare. Initially, both sides did not use many landmines. As the conflict progressed, the insurgents realized they could not engage the Soviet army head-on, so they gradually adopted guerrilla tactics such as ambushes and laying landmines. In the early stages of the war, the Soviet army calculated that the number of their soldiers killed by bullets was twice the number killed by shrapnel, which included various types of explosives such as artillery shells and landmines. In the later stages of the war, the shrapnel damage was 2.5 times that of bullet damage. Considering that the insurgents did not have much equipment such as muzzle guns or aerial bombs, the shrapnel damage mainly came from mortar shells, landmines, and other weapons. Another valuable piece of data is the ratio of Soviet soldiers' casualties. In the early stages, it was 1:3, and in the later stages, it was 1:5, meaning that the survival rate of injured soldiers increased in the later stages. So, why is this? Let's take a look at how the Soviet army dealt with landmine warfare. After a period of practical exploration, soldiers took some makeshift measures to protect themselves. In addition to wearing heavy bulletproof vests, they reinforced the bottom of vehicles with sandbags and sat on top of armored vehicles. These measures did not significantly reduce the probability of triggering a landmine, but they did increase the survival rate and reduce the impact of explosions and the damage from shrapnel and flying debris. This point is reflected in the Soviet Army's medical records. As the proportion of soldiers injured by shrapnel increased, the proportion of injuries to the torso, including the chest and abdomen, decreased significantly, which was believed to be the result of the bulletproof vests providing protection and effectiveness during explosions. The Soviet Army also made tactical changes. They established a special unit responsible for clearing roads within their area of responsibility. This unit was equipped with mine-clearing tanks, armored personnel carriers, engineers, and infantry. The unit's task was to clear the roads in their area of responsibility and maintain security for an extended period. During the mission, a tank with mine-clearing capabilities led the way, with a small number of engineers carrying mine detectors and infantry providing light weapons cover slightly ahead on both sides of the tank. Their task was to detect roadside explosives and search for enemy ambushes. Behind the tank, at a distance of 40 to 50 meters, was another group of engineers with mine-detecting dogs, who would further carefully inspect the areas on both sides of the road. Behind and on the sides of this group of soldiers were another group of engineers with mine-detecting equipment, who would inspect the 20 to 40 meter area on both sides of the road. Finally, there was a group of soldiers providing protection, possibly riding in armored personnel carriers or similar equipment. This team's detection speed was actually very slow, advancing only about 2 kilometers in an hour. After clearing an area, soldiers would be stationed to protect a certain section, similar to the deployment of soldiers to protect a section of road in the film Ninth Company. The mine-clearing soldiers were vigilant of all suspicious targets, such as abandoned vehicles or disturbed soil. When landmines or other explosives were discovered, they would first assess the situation, and then an experienced officer would determine whether to detonate and remove the explosives on the spot or disarm the landmine. If the situation could not be resolved immediately, a clear warning line would be set up to alert friendly forces. The engineers responsible for disarming the explosives needed to wear bomb suits and conduct further searches within at least 1 meter of the radius of the explosive to prevent the setting of booby traps or other ambushes. Despite the Soviet Union's efforts to deal with landmine warfare, data comparison still shows that the guerrillas' landmine warfare was successful. The proportion of Soviet soldiers' casualties due to shrapnel in the first year of the war was 37.2%, and in the final year, it was 71.9%. This indicates that mortar shells and landmines remained the key weapons for guerrilla warfare under the special terrain conditions in Afghanistan.